Hey guys, I'm Valiant. I'm excited to share this build with you guys. I hope you enjoy. The thing that makes this build so good and so easy to gear is we're not using Boulder as a core skill, so we're not using Spirit. You don't need specific gear. You need one unique. It helps you get to endgame, and you're able to farm anything that you want to, such as Varshan, Grigor, and the Beast in the Eyes. Then you have the option as well to gear for any build that you're looking for. There's only two things you need to make this build work. The first being the unique Dolmen Stone, and the second is the symbiotic aspect. It's very simple to gear, and since Boulder is such a strong ability naturally, gear required for this is going to be a lot less strict. And all the earth uniques that enhance this build are relatively common. These uniques being Vasili's Prayer, Unsatiable Fury, and then late game uniques such as T-Bot's Will or even Shaco. So it has a lot of potential. And then eventually you could turn Boulder into the core skill version of this build, which is the next tier of this build. It's very endgame viable. For the abilities, I'm using Trample. It's mainly just for movement, but it's also a source of Unstoppable. Next, I'm using Hurricane. Enemies who are damaged by Hurricane are slowed by 25% for 2 seconds. Enemies affected by Hurricane deal 20% less damage, and we need it for the build. The third ability is Earthen Bulwark. This is our second form of Unstoppable, and it adds a little bit of extra damage. For our ultimate, I'm using Petrify. Encase all nearby enemies in stone, stunning them for 3 seconds. You deal 30% increased critical strike damage to enemies affected by Petrify. Against bosses, this is boosted to 50%. For the basic, I'm using Claw. Claw's attack speed is increased by 15%. We're also putting another point into it to make it have a chance to attack twice. In doing this, we will have more chances for symbiotic aspect to proc to reduce the cooldowns of all our other abilities, including Boulder, which is our next ability. This combined with Dolmen Stone is what the build is built around, and it is our main source of damage. Naturally a strong ability, and Boulder's critical strike chance is increased by 3% each time it deals damage. It will rotate around us. It will have more chances to hit enemies, which will increase its critical strike chance. For the aspects, the helm I'm using the unique Vasili's Prayer. It's not necessary, but it does buff the build. Your earth skills are now also werebear skills and fortify you. This allows us to buff Boulder with earth damage and werebear damage. The aspect on the chest is going to be Quicksand. Our earth skills slow enemies up to 50%, which will increase our damage with other aspects. For the gloves, I'm using Symbiotic. When the Nature's Fury key passive triggers a free skill, your non-ultimate cooldowns of the opposite type are reduced by 5 seconds. For the legs, I'm using Disobedience. You gain increased armor for 4 seconds when you deal any form of damage, stacking up to 66%. For the boots, I'm using Ballistic. When you have Fortify, your skills gain +2 ranks. For the weapon, I'm using Edge Masters, which gives us a flat 20% increased damage buff. We will always have maxed resource. For the offhand, I'm using Nature's Savagery. This is so Claw triggers the symbiotic aspect. For the first ring, Crashstone Band. Earth skills deal up to 40% more critical strike damage to crowd controlled enemies, which everything will always be crowd controlled because of the quicksand aspect on the chest. For the next ring, I'm using Eridia's Inexorable Will. This is just a quality of life unique. It is not needed. When your ultimate is cast, it will pull all enemies in towards you. It also does physical damage. And finally, the only unique required for the build, the Dolmen Stone. Casting Boulder while Hurricane is active will cause your boulders to rotate around you. For the skill tree, our basic attack is going to be Claw, and we're going to put 1 point Enhanced and Wild Claw. In the core skills, 3 points in Predatory Instinct and 3 points in Iron Fur. In the defensive skills, I have 1 point in the Earthen Bulwark, Enhanced and Innate Earthen Bulwark, 2 points in the Ancestral Fortitude, just to max out our resistances, then 3 points in the Vigilance. We are only using 1 defensive skill, but we need points to progress further down the tree. There's no points in the companion skills. For the RAS skills, 1 point in Elemental Exposure, and 3 points in the Endless Tempest. This is very important because it extends the duration of our Hurricane, and Petrify has a 30% chance to proc Cataclysm as well. 1 point to Hurricane, Enhanced Hurricane, and Savage Hurricane. 5 points into Boulder, Enhanced, and Savage Boulder. Natural Boulder seems like a good option, but how often your boulders hit enemies, it should quickly pass the 20% base that this gives you, and it's only active while you have Fortify. You're not guaranteed to be fortified. 3 points into Crushing Earth, 3 points in a Safeguard, and 3 points in a Stone Guard. 1 point in Trample, and Enhanced Trample was moved as well. We don't need the damage. We only need the movement. 2 points into Mending. You can move these if needed. The ultimate skills, 1 point into Petrify. I did end up adding a point to the second part of Petrify because we had extra points available. It increases the duration of your increased critical strike damage. 3 points into Defiance, 3 points into Natural Disaster, and 3 points into Resonance, and then 3 points into Quick Shift. When a shape-shifting skill transforms you into a different form, that skill deals 15% increased damage. And since we're going to be shape-shifting so often, this is very useful for the Boulder damage. And for our key passive, Nature's Fury, casting our Earth skill has a 30% chance to trigger a free Storm skill of the same category and vice versa. We're using this in combination with the symbiotic aspect to reduce all our cooldowns so we could use them more often. For the spirit boons, I'm using Wariness and Avian Wrath. Gain 30% critical strike damage. Bolster, this could be moved to Calamity. Obsidian Slam. More overpowers are going to cause us to do more damage, especially with the glyphs that we have set up. And finally, we're using Calm Before the Storm. Nature magic skills have up to a 10% chance to reduce the cooldown of your ultimate skill. This is going to greatly increase the uptime of our ultimate. Other good options would be Iron Feather, 14% maximum life, or swooping attacks, more attack speed, faster procs. Scythe Talons is actually not that great in this build because our critical strike chance for Boulder is so high and it increases its own crit chance. Critical strike damage is very important to this build, not chance. For our construct abilities, Flash of Adrenaline, Tactical Support, Duration Support, and I do have Evernight. But if you don't, you're just going to take Safeguard from Tempest, then Tempest, Fortify Support, Efficiency Support, and if you did end up moving Safeguard Support, you would be applying Piercing Support to help Tempest brightest damage. Disclaimer, I am wearing the gear in the aspect section. I am max level, and some of my glyphs have been leveled up, but this build will help you get to endgame quicker. Here's a tier 90 Nightmare Dungeon, just to show you how the build performs. And remember, I'm just using hand-me-downs for my leveling build that I use. Didn't care about the stats or anything on them, I only cared about the aspects. For the Paragon board, we start off and we go to the right. We get the damage. Our glyph's going to be outmatched. It's going to increase our resistance and our damage. You deal 16% increased physical damage to non-elites and bosses. The next tree is going to be Inner Beast. The glyph is going to be territorial. You gain 10% damage reduction against close enemies. We'll pick up some shape-shifting damage here and attack speed. The next board is going to be Earthen Devastation. Your Earth skills deal 10% increased critical strike damage, increased by 20% of your damage. And the glyph is going to be Earth and Sky. Nature magic skills deal 10% increased damage to crowd controlled or vulnerable enemies. We're going to pick up some damage to crowd controlled enemies on the way out to the top board, Ancestral Guidance. We are not taking the legendary node. We're just here to get an extra glyph. When an enemy is damaged by you, they become vulnerable for 3 seconds. This cannot happen more than once every 20 seconds. This is just here to make sure that we apply vulnerability because we're not using many storm skills to activate it naturally. We're to go back down to the Inner Beast board and then we're to go out the left side to the Survival Instincts board. We're to get damage while in Werebearer, armor while in Werebearer, and our glyph is going to be Spirit. Critical strikes increase the damage an enemy takes from you by 2% for 20 seconds up to 12%. We're going to pick up the nearby nodes and max out as much dexterity as possible. Then we're going to go down and pick up Werebearer skill damage and 90% overpower damage. We're going to go back to the Inner Beast board. And we're going to go out the right side to the Constricting Tendrils board. We're not taking the legendary. Our glyph is going to be Fang and Claw while in Werewolf or Werebearer form. Most enemies take 12% increased damage. And this is also going to buff the maximum life that we're here to pick up. And then for our final glyph, glyph number 7, we're going down to the Thunderstruck board, and the glyph will be Overpower. When you overpower an enemy, all damage they take from you is increased by 12% for 5 seconds. So we have all these forms of stacking and additive damage just to enhance Boulder as much as possible without it actually being a core skill. If you guys have any questions, let me know. I'll answer them down below in the comments. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate the support, and I'll see you guys next time.